welcome to our midweek course celebration case study that we've been given. We have a client that we will be going over and some of her irregularities or what's showing up for her. And we will be suggesting some recommendations, what she can work into her regular daily life, whatever works for her. All right, so let's get started. Here's our client information. Our client is 30 years old, 5'8", 140 pounds. Her blood pressure is 116/78. Her BPM is 74. The client has come in with troubles of diagnosed anxiety, trouble staying asleep, trouble staying focused, when it's challenging, variable hunger, stress, often feels emotional, fatigued, irregular menstrual cycles, and occasional PMS. Here is her pulse and her gunas and what her lifestyle is. First of all, most of the qualities that are showing up in the surface pulse are Vata qualities. And the Vata qualities that we're seeing, actually, they're spread to the subdoshas, are the cold, light, subtle, and moving. Those qualities that are showing up in the subdoshas and even in the surface pulse of Pitta, or that are Pitta-like, are slightly oily, moving, and flowing. But we are unsure of what's happening as far as the movement, if it's flowing in the right directions because of all their irregularities showing up. We are seeing some kapha qualities also, like cold and soft. Signs of a balanced dosha, or at least Vata, what we're seeing mostly in the client, are mental alertness, proper formation of bodily tissues, normal digestion, strong immunity, sound sleep, enthusiasm, and creativity. What we're seeing mostly in our client, of what she's come to us with in this chart, are insomnia, like trouble like going and staying to sleep. It seems to be like there might be some constipation. She said that she's having common fatigue and anxiety and worry. We're going to go over the subdoshas that are presenting right now. The prana one that are showing is showing, prana in general is life force, so it governs all the intellect, the heart, the sense organs, the consciousness. So what we're seeing in there is moving, which is mostly a Vata Pitta thing. We see soft, which is a kapha thing, so evidently kapha is trying to intervene and help out a little bit. And then slightly oil, which is a Pitta thing. And prana has to do with the head and the heart. She has no regular routine. We're seeing anxiety, mood swings, relationship issues with siblings, parents, and romantically. Next subdosha that we're dealing with is samana, and we're seeing moving, which is both a Vata and a Pitta thing, and light, which is a Vata thing. That is the dotum to the Agni, and she's having bloating, fatigue, irregularity, and irregular hunger. And samana is what fans the Agni everywhere and supports digestion, which is something she is having issues with. And that dotum is the first part of that small intestines that helps get nourishment, nutrition, that first part of the stomach that helps start distributing that and breaking it down the rest of the way. The next subdosha that we are seeing problems in or some of the Vata qualities or anything else. It's showing subtle, which is a kapha quality, and covered, which is more than likely ama that's in her body. And it goes from navel to thigh. So what it governs is elimination of like the bodily fluids. The client is saying that She's having bowel movements after she drinks coffee and lunch, irregular menstrual cycles. So that is something that we're going to look at. We are also, let's see, we're looking at Pachika Pitta showing up also as moving, which is a Vata Pitta, both Vata Pitta qualities, and light, which is Vata. And that Dodam also has is part of it with the small intestines, parts of the small intestines. So her digestion is off because of irregular hunger and no regular meal times. And this is the subdosha that digests your food, that Jatara Agni. Next, we're looking at the subdosha that's showing up and having irregularities is Sattaka Pitta, which is that dosha that governs achievement, fulfillment of desire, intelligence, grasping of knowledge, memory, ego, enthusiasm, energy to drive away delusions. It has to do with the heart and the brain. So she's having relationship issues, fatigue, mood swings, anxiety, trouble staying focused when it's challenging, stress, feels emotional, and no regular routine. Our next subdoshas that we will be going over with the client are Ambalambika Kapha, which supports the heart and the lumbar region. The client is feeling cold, which is a Vata Kapha, both Vata and Kapha qualities, subtle, which is Kapha quality, and covered, which shows there might be Ama there. The client, I would say, because it has to do with the heart, the mood swings, the relationship issues, and just needing overall nourishment. Then we've got Tarbika Kapha. What's showing up in the pulse is moving, which is a Vata Pitta thing, light, which is Vata, and it's subdued, which shows there might be not a proper movement going on, which is blocked shrotas. It has to do with nourishment of the mind and a sense of motor, and sense in motor organs. So I could see the not having a regular meditation, the lack of nourishment for the mind and the body. I determined when I was going over the material for the client that her Prakriti over visual assessment is more Vata Pitta, especially what was showing up in her pulse, because she's got between medium small frame, so those are for the frame and the face, some protruding bones, but between leanness and average weight, which points more towards Vata because all those regular Vata qualities. Her skin shows either cold, slightly oily, looks like the client can tan, but would burn first. Showing both Vata and Pitta qualities, but it seems more irregularities that would be with Vata. Her hair's red, which is more Pitta quality. The Prakriti, the Agni, and Ama and Ojas. I've got a saying right here that we're going to go over towards the end. But Prakriti, I'm seeing that it is mostly Vata. Agni is Vishama, Ama is medium, and Ojas is medium with Kapha showing up in the deep pulse, and Pitta showing up trying to balance both Vata and Kapha. And I have this quote right here: Kapha in its balance state promotes strength in the form of Ojas. When morbid condition, it takes the form of excrete and causes misery. So, Kapha usually, when Kapha is balanced and showing up in the deep pulse, usually that means there's Ojas showing, and when there's clarity. The Kapha is trying to show up, Pitta is trying to balance both Kapha and Vata out because it's that balancing factor, but the digestion's not there, and Vata's showing up in all of the pulses. So we're going to go on to her dhatus. a lot of these DOT2s are what's showing up in the irregulars that the client has come to us with, like her menstruation fluid or her menstruation cycle is irregular, which is of kapha dosha. Kapha is not able to, is subdued at the moment, so that's why we're having that irregularity. And then her rakta, where pitta dosha is, her blood and her tendons, there's not proper flow of transportation because vata is just showing all up, not knowing what direction to go in. Then we have Medea, which is the sweat, and it doesn't seem like the body is producing either not enough sweat at all, so that's not balanced out either. Then we've got the Maja, which is the bone marrow and nervous tissue, and she's already complaining of anxiety and not getting enough sleep and stress. So, I mean, that could cause a lot of problems as far as the nervous tissue with the Maja. And I determined that her stage of pathogenesis is in the early stage, third stage, because vata has left its seat and has spread to the other doshas. For the client, I would recommend Ama Pachna, digesting the Ama, moving the Ama out of the system. The pulse is showing covering is subdued, which is showing up like there's bloating, or she's having bloating. Most likely she's having constipation, irregular menstrual cycle, meaning Ama is present and blocking the shrotas, and nothing's moving properly because vata is extremely confused at the moment because it's not getting that proper routine, proper diet. All right, here are some of the recommendations for diet that I have for the client, since vata is showing up mostly and needing to be pacified. I would cut the coffee out, which she is having. She needs to change the grain she's having because the toast and the bagel is not working. The fruit needs to be warm. The leftovers at lunch, the sandwich, the chips, the takeout, just something more warm with rice, grains that are suitable for vata, and some warm vegetables. And cut out the tea and the coffee in the afternoon. The tea is fine as long as it's not caffeinated. Her dinner, the vegetables and the rice are fine, but the pasta, the salad, make sure the soups are what we have on the list. Make sure the grains, because she has breads on here, the curries are the proper spices. Cut out the flatbreads, the ligaments, beans. The dals are fine. Dessert, I would just leave out chocolate for that. And then here are some other recommendations for the diet for vata, along with whatever herbs and suggestions and the seasons changing to help the Agni. Continued recommendations. I recommend Santarpana, which is to promote growth and nourish the tissues, because that is what I see most likely needs to happen is those DOT2s are showing up and they're not being nourished. So the client is needing to pacify the aggravated dosha and balance out the Dhatu Agni to support that healthy tissue growth. All right, so now we've moved to daily routine. This is what I suggest. The client might have to alter it depending on her work schedule or what's going on in her life experience. So I recommend at least the client wake up before 6, before kapha time, and go to bed by 10, because her 11:30 bedtime and then having trouble trying to fall asleep and constantly interrupted is not helping, which means she's sleeping a little bit later, especially because she works at a spa She doesn't have to get to work till later, so 7:30 is when she wakes up, but she's needing this self-care routine and just a routine in general to get those irregularities going or, or going away. Um, Next, I recommend that she keeps walking with the dog because it's very grounding, especially if it's in nature. The gardening's very grounded because you're connecting to the earth, and the restorative yoga is very grounding. The only other thing I would add, because I think the tissues need more nourishment and the transportation for Vata needs to be corrected, is to add hatha yoga 2 or 3 times a week, along with doing the restorative that she's already doing, maybe just a couple times a week, because she might get too grounded. That's why we're seeing kapha in other areas that it's not supposed to be. And with hatha yoga, it's slower paced because it focuses on the breath. They're controlled movements, and with Vata being that air space element, it needs that focus in there, which she's having trouble with. And the stretching will also help, and the controlled movements with the pause will help build that muscle also. So she's getting the strengthening and the lengthening at the same time. Things like vinyasa and ashtanga are too fast paced, and Vata's already flying all over the place, so I would not recommend those at all. The herb recommendations that I suggest is to detox for 2 weeks using Herbal Digest, 2 tablets before meals, and the Digestone, 2 tablets at bedtime to make sure to drink sufficient water with that, and the CCFT. After 2 weeks, I would continue to Digestone with the same instructions. Other herbs that I would add would be Worry Free, 2 tablets twice a day after meals, the Deep Rest, 2 tablets 30 minutes before bed, and Ashwagandha, 2 tablets twice a day after meals. Additional recommendations that I would have would be the use of aromatherapy like lavender or the calming Vata aroma oil in a diffuser at bedtime and during the day, just to help with that feeling of anxiety, the stress, help with the stress, to kind of help keep that mind clear and focused. I would also recommend the relationship counseling for the client, showing that she is having issues connecting to herself and with siblings and her parents, and having a hard breakup. And when she's ready to have a relationship, the universe will show her. Also, I recommend regular transcendental meditation twice a day at like scheduled times, so that way she's keeping that flow, that routine going. In conclusion, this helped me a lot to where I know I can do the research to help clients, and I know that it will also help myself and see some things that I need to do for me, especially before I start seeing clients. So I make sure that my balance and my doshas are not all over the place, so I am throwing the clients off also. But I am going to enjoy when I'm ready to see clients and not only help myself but help them also. At the end, I do have some references of where I've gotten the material from, and I appreciate you showing up to my presentation, and have a wonderful evening. Good night.